Hey everybody, if you remember, in the last practical theory video, we discussed the major 1, major 4, and major 5 chords, what we generally call the primary chords of a major key. Now, logic will dictate that if we have a set of primaries, then naturally we should expect a set of secondary chords, right? So what do these chords do? What do they sound like? And how do we identify them? Well, let's do a little detective work and learn all about secondary chords in major keys. Now, before we go any further, let's review a few rules. So when dealing with chord relationships, we label chords using Roman numerals. And remember that uppercase Roman numerals represent major chords, lowercase Roman numerals represent minor chords. And point 3, to figure out the letter name equivalent of the Roman numeral, simply count alphabetically from the 1 chord, which is also the name of the key, until you reach the desired chord. For example, if we want to find the 4 in C, we simply start at 1, which is C, and count through the alphabet until you reach 4. C, D, E, F. One more thing. If you don't already know the difference between the sound of a major chord and a minor chord, here's a handy little thumbnail sketch. So for major, most of my young students will tell me that major chords are happy sounding. Personally, I prefer to think of them as bright or light. Minor. So predictably, those same young students will say that minor chords are sad. Now, my personal preference is moody, pensive, or dark. So here's a Roman numeral breakdown of all the native chords in a major key. And here's the alphabetical breakdown of the native chords in the key of C. So as we mentioned earlier, the 1, the 4, and the 5, the major chords incidentally, are what we call the primary chords. We can now see that the secondaries are what's left. The 2, the 3, and the 6. All minor chords. By the way, a quick disclaimer, we are not going to deal with any 7 diminished chords today, so we're just going to X those out. I'm saving the diminished chord topic for another video. So now that we've established that our secondaries are minor, this might be a good time to inventory the minor chords we have at our disposal. Now, since we haven't yet made the leap into bar chords on this channel, we're only going to look at the open minor chords, and in reality there's only 3, the A minor, D minor, and E minor. Now we can kind of sort of cheat a little bit and get an open C minor add 9 and a G minor, but for pure unadulterated minor open chords there are only these 3. So let's start with the A minor. Notice that it looks a lot like a standard C chord, only the 3rd finger placement is different. So far pretty easy, right? Okay, so let's take a look at an E minor chord. There's 2 ways to do this. You can simply move your A minor chord 1 string down and remove your index finger. Or we could just make the E major and remove our index finger. These 2 chords make a great practice pair, so approach them as a set. Okay, so for the D minor, let's go back to an A minor chord and then move the entire chord up 1 string, then kick the 3rd finger into the 3rd fret. Notice that these 2 chords also make a great practice pair, so knock yourselves out. And now that we have our 3 open minor chords identified, where do we go from here? Well, we can go a couple of different directions, but let's start by seeing how the secondaries get along with the primaries. Okay, so this is a very common chord sequence. The 1, minor 6, major 4, major or dominant 5 to the 1. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because it's been a staple of rock music, especially doo-wop, for about 60 years. And if you compare the sound of this progression against the 1, 4, 1, 5, 1 of the primaries video, you'll notice that this new sequence has more depth and color. Now, let's take an up-close look at the chords themselves. Notice that the C major morphs nearly seamlessly into an A minor. Only finger 3 has to move. Now, notice how easily the A minor moves to F. And in fact, the C, A minor, and F all anchor on finger 1 at the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And so now we can finish off with a G7 to a C, which is pretty easy, right? So now, how about we replace the F in this chord progression with a D minor? Now we have C, A minor, D minor, which is going to be the 2 chord, G7 and C. And we get even more color. So now let's try this in another key. So G, E minor, C, and D. E minor will be the 6 in the key of G. Now, notice I used a regular C instead of a C add 9. Most of the time I use the C add 9 when I'm playing this G, but it just worked out. If you'd like to use the C add 9, it works great, so the choice is yours. Also, let's try it in the key of D. So we get D, G. That will be, this one will be slightly different. This will be a 1, 4, 2, 5. So I mentioned a little earlier that there are a couple of different directions we can go with the minor chords at this point. Now, we've already seen how to use minor chords in conjunction with the majors, so what's the other way we can go? Well, now we should learn a way to reckon the relative minor key and then learn a minor blues. So check this out. So let's return to our major key chord breakdown in the key of C. Notice that we end up having C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major or 7, and A minor, and again, we're going to disregard the B diminished. Now, what if we made a 1? Well, in order to do this, we go back 2 letters from the 1 chord. So let's go to the B right here, and then an A. Now, anytime we go back 2 letters down from the 1 in a major key, it'll always give us what we call the relative minor key. And we call it relative minor simply because it shares the same notes and chords with its relative major. Pretty easy, huh? So that means if we just continue on with the list as it was above, this gives us the notes of the relative minor scale. Now, if we assign a chord value to each one, everything stays the same, but now notice our 1 becomes A minor, 2 we're not going to deal with. C, the 3 chord is C major, the 4 chord is D minor, the 5 chord is E minor, the 6 chord is F major, and the 7 chord is G major, and then of course we return back to our 1. So this is a list of the notes of the relative minor scale, and this is a list of the chords in the relative minor. And notice that compared to the major key, everything is flipped. In other words, our original C, F, and G, which were our 1, 4, and 5, have now become 3, 6, and 7. They're no longer the primaries. The minor chords now have that distinction. In other words, A minor is our 1 chord, D minor is our 4, and E minor is our 5. So maybe we can say that minor keys are the opposite of majors? Maybe. So let's try these chords out in a blues progression and see what happens. So for anyone that needs a quick review on the blues progression, check out episode 5, What Exactly is Blues? Check that out and then come meet me back here. Now, notice that the quality of each chord has become minor. In other words, it's the opposite of a blues in a major key where everything is major. Here's what it sounds like in A minor according to the chart. Now, hopefully something sounds a little off. To me, it kind of sounds like monks trying to chant some jazz, maybe. So what's wrong? Well, we could go into a long theoretical explanation, but for now it's not necessary because I've got a quick fix. At this point, let's just say that as a rule of thumb, it's safe to assume that all 5 chords are major. So this means a minor blues using A minor, D minor, and E major should sound like this. If we'd like to try it in E minor, we would use E minor, A minor, and B7. All right, so now we've learned how to use the secondaries of our major keys and convert them into the primaries of the relative minor keys. And at this point, we can let our ears adjust to the sound of a minor key in the same way that we've let our ears adjust to the primaries in a major key. Now also at this point, we come to realize that our secondary chords in a major key mostly become the primaries in the relative minor. Now I say mostly because remember, we had to change the minor 5 to a major 5 in the minor key. Now this change of the quality of the 5 chord has serious implications for the secondary chords in our newfound minor keys. And we'll discuss that fully in another video, so watch out for that in the coming weeks. Thanks for watching String 'em Up. My name's Dave Holland, and remember to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content on the channel. Also, feel free to leave comments and suggestions for any topics you'd like to see in future episodes. So have fun, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.